Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. Today we're heading to Standard to check out this super sweet deck, which I'm calling 4-Color Crush, which recently took Zolt Tukoli to a top 32 finish at Grand Prix Taipei. So congrats to Tukoli on their finish with the deck. A quick reminder before we break it all down, if you enjoy this deck and want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a chance at being made into videos next week. So let's talk a 4-Color Crush. So Crush of Tentacles is kind of the key card to this deck. So 6 mana, bounce all non-land permanents on the battlefield. You can also Surge it if you cast a cheap spell beforehand for 5 mana, and you get an 8/8 Octopus out of the deal. So most of the time when I've seen people play this card, they play it as a defensive spell, trying to bounce all their opponent's stuff, stay alive while they're milling their opponent out or something. But this deck kind of flips things around on its head, and instead it is building its own deck so it can generate value by bouncing all of its own permanents with Crush of Tentacles, so it kind of gives it this cool combo deck feel. So what are we bouncing with Crush of Tentacles? Well, first off, a bunch of creatures. So we got Elvish Visionary, can draw us a card, bounce it back to your hand, draw another card, keeps you cycling through your deck. Nissa Vastwood Seer gets you a forest, bounce it back to your hand, get another forest. Reflector Mage, you get to bounce a second creature. And then on the top end, we got Dragonlord Atarka, which can kill opponents' creatures, so they won't be getting them back to their hand with the Crush. And then you bounce it back to your hand, play it again to kill whatever they play after the Crush. And also, like, Elvish Visionary is pretty cheap, so there's a good chance that you get up to 7 mana, you can Elvish Visionary, immediately Crush, paying the Surge cost, and get an 8/8 out of the deal as you're bouncing all this stuff back to your hand for value. Then we have a Den Protector, which is kind of a weird one. It's kind of expensive, but technically you can play it face down, flip it up, get something back, maybe your Crush, from the graveyard, and then when you cast the Crush, you bounce your Den Protector, you can play it face down again, get something else back, kind of loop that way, really slowly, but it is kind of a loop. And then Oath of Nissa, Oath of Jace, also great cards to bounce back to your hand. Oath of Nissa is also super key for actually surging Crush, since it's 1 mana, so for 6 total mana, you can Oath of Nissa, get a creature to your hand, Crush, get the Octopus, bounce Oath of Nissa back to your hand so you can play it again. Oath of Jace just keeps you filtering through your deck, finding more cards, finding more action. So eventually you're going to grind out a ton of value, draw a ton of cards, cast multiple Atarkas and Reflector Mages, and then win with a combination of your creatures and the big Octopus tokens that come from Crush of Tentacles. Traverse the Uvenwald and Anticipate help you find what you need in your deck. Traverse, if you have Delirium activated, can just tutor up whatever creature. You can find like your 1-of Den Protector to get your Crush back, for example. And then Jace, just a 1-of, also cycles you through your deck. Then the deck has some expensive cards and some ramps. So Explosive Vegetation is really key because the deck is 4 colors and it's looking to cast expensive things. Part the Water Veil kind of lets you combo off to some extent. You can part the Water Veil into Crush of Tentacles, which wouldn't bounce the Awoken land from Part the Water Veil because it's non-land permanents. Descend Upon the Sinful is a Wrath that can also leave behind an Angel token. So when you're not crushing your opponent, you have these other really big powerful spells that also leave behind a creature. Mana base wise, bunch of duels, Evolving Wilds, a bunch of basics. In the sideboard, this is kind of the control package, so you got negates to make sure you can resolve your Crush of Tentacles, your Descend Upon the Sinful, your Part the Water Veil. Dragonlord Ramoka also protects you from counter spells because your opponent can't counter Dragonlord Ramoka, and they can't cast spells during your turn. Ojutai generates a lot of value in control matchups, as does Tireless Tracker, just sits on the battlefield, gets you clues, helps you draw more cards. And then if you're playing aggro decks, or kind of the mid-rangey decks, you got Emulating Glare for more removal, a bunch more Wraths and Pseudo-Wraths and Planar Outburst and Tragic Arrogance, and then Linval the Preserver, which is another good target to bounce. You won't necessarily get the Angel token, because if you bounce everything, your opponent will have more creatures, but if you're down to 5 life or something, Linvala, bounce it back to your hand, Linvala, you're going to gain a lot of life and get back up near your opponent's life total and out of the danger zone. So that is 4-Color Crush in Standard. The deck looks super sweet. It's actually pretty cheap as well, at 190 bucks in paper, 127 ticks online. Not quite budget standards, but still a fairly cheap deck if you want to check it out. Anyway, that's been our instant deck tech today. I hope you enjoyed 4-Color Crush in Standard. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.